Tim, welcome. Nice to have you with us. Happy holidays. How you doing? Okay, pal?
Thanks for having me, Chris. How are you?
You doing well. All right, there's a report right now. I'm not sure if it's accurate. You help me out. That the owner would like to see the Mets sign Bauer, and Sandy would like to think maybe the money should go to Springer. You buy it? What's your take on that for a second? If it is true, who wins?
I haven't heard the exact same thing, but I do think this is one of the things that Steve Cohen and Sandy Alderson will have to work out at the top of the executive chain here. Everything Steve Cohen said when he came in as the owner of the Mets was that I'm going to hire good baseball people, and I will let those baseball people make those decisions that they want to make. And we saw evidence of that to start, with Sandy Alderson letting go of Bertie Van Wagenen as general manager and some other people in the Mets front office, including Omar Minaya, that had good relationships with Steve Cohen. So I think Alderson has had the edge to this point. Obviously, a decision on Bauer versus Springer or other free agents is a big, that involves a little bit more money than some of the other conversations here. But I think in the end, if this is going to be run the way that the Mets have said it's going to be run, it will be Alderson coming out on top of those kinds of conversations.
Yeah. And I would, myself, I would bring Springer in instead, but that's a very well put. We'll see if who wins this one, if in fact that is accurate. All right, the Mets, listen, Cohen we got a big advantage if you're a Met fan, because you have an owner here who didn't lose any money in 2020, and he's worth $14 billion, and that is going to allow him to play in the deep end of the pool. The Mets have not always played in the 10-feet area. Now they can, and I don't think he's going to go crazy, but that gives them a big advantage over most teams. What's your take on that for a second? Let me hear.
Yeah, well, you look at this as kind of a cascade of changes for the Mets. You move from the Wilpon ownership to a new ownership. That was going to be good news for Mets fans in general. Then you move to the guy who is the wealthiest majority owner in Major League Baseball. That's better news. Then you move to that guy at a time when the rest of the sport is suffering financial hardship he himself did not endure in the past year, at a time when arguably the team's three biggest needs, catcher, center field, and the starting rotation, are served by the three biggest names in the free agent market. It's really a perfect dynamic for the Mets with those guys out there. It's interesting to see which way they'll go with it. They've got about 55 or 60 million to go underneath the competitive balance tax threshold after they sign Trevor May. They could go over that for the first time since I think the early 2000s. But everything I've heard from people who know Steve Cohen and who have seen how he works in other marketplaces, be it Wall Street or the art marketplace, don't expect him to go crazy. They say he values financial flexibility. He doesn't like to overpay for things. So I think the idea that the Mets might sign two or three of those top end guys, I don't think that's particularly likely. But I do expect that they'd come away with at least one of those big names.
100%. I'm with you right on there. And I think they're making the right move if these reports about McCann are accurate. And now, listen, you're buying hopeful. I mean, he hasn't done a lot in his career. I'm not interested in some All-Star game. They all make the All-Star game. I am not that interested, in certain things. He only played 31 games last year. He kind of split the role with Grandal. But I do think if Realmuto is going to, ask for the moon, and he has every right to, but if he does that, and you got another guy here who can you get maybe for half the price, or a third of the price, I think you go there. I think you take a chance, and you hope that McCann, develops into a big-time player over these next 2-3 years. He's 30 years old. He's coming into his own son. I think that the money price will be better. I think that's worth an opportunity. I think I'd go there if it was my choice. What's your take on that for a sec? Let me hear.
I do think it depends on what else you do with the money you save. If it's pairing McCann with Springer, I can't really argue with that. If it's just a full-on depth approach where you sign a bunch of guys in the $10 million range, I think you've missed out on an opportunity. I like Realmuto more just because it's more of a sure thing, and I don't think it will take. If it takes 6 years to get Realmuto, I think it's a different story. But I think you probably can get him for less than that. With McCann, though, we've seen the way the market's gone the last couple of years. Guys get paid less on the actual track record than on what you think they're capable of doing coming up, and what the underlying statistics are. You saw that with Zach Wheeler last year in the Phillies, a guy who had a career ERA plus barely above league average, and yet got $118 million. Mets are doing a kind of similar thing with Trevor May in the back end of the bullpen, guy who's got a decent ERA, but they really like the way his fastball velocity has looked, how his whiff rate has looked, his swing rate, strikeout rate, and all of those things. So with McCann, it's only 2 years of really solid offensive results going back to the start of 2019. But the underlying peripheral numbers, the exit velocity jumped, and the expected WOBA and all of those things that you look at in terms of StatCast statistics suggest there is some sustainability there. Is he going to outperform Real Muto offensively over the next 4 years? Probably not. But can he be a reasonable facsimile of Real Muto at, you're talking half or a third of the price? That's a reasonable bet that they can take. But I think they'd have to complement that with one of those other big moves we've talked about.
100%. All right, let's say they don't get Bauer. Do they have enough starting pitching in your eyes to be a divisional force in September?
Not right now. I think they would have to, you'd be counting on a really strong return from Noah Syndergaard from Tommy John surgery if you're not making an additional move. I think if they're out on Bauer, if they don't pursue Bauer aggressively or he signs elsewhere, then you look at that next tier of free agent starting pitchers. That's guys like Jake Odorizzi, Masahiro Tanaka, Tomoyuki Sugano, who's been posted from Japan. Those are guys who might fit that middle of the rotation. They're bringing Marcus Stroman back after he didn't pitch in 2020. He accepted the qualifying offer. So that gives them kind of a guy to slot behind Jacob deGrom in a number 2, number 3 part of the rotation. They could use another guy like that and push, David Peterson down to the back end of the rotation. You don't know what you're getting out of Steven Matz. You don't know when Syndergaard's coming back. You don't know if Seth Lugo is better as a starter or a reliever. So you've got a lot of questions with the rest of that rotation. It'd be nice to have one more sure thing toward the top.
Good job there, Tim. Well done. Appreciate it. Happy holidays. We'll check in. Appreciate a few minutes here today.
You too, Chris. Thanks a lot.